All right, welcome. This is episode 44.
Wow.
44. Oh my gosh, right? It is a pleasure today to be joined by Caryn, CJ Charles, who I was so lucky to work with back in the day. So,
Oh,
not just a former colleague, but a friend, and also a heck of a writer. And we're going to talk about her work with children's books and writing in Spanish. Thanks so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Thank you so much for having me. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Like I said, it's a pleasure to talk to a friend.
Absolutely.
So we're going to talk about your children's book. My mother's a superhero. Me, Mamá Es Una Superheroína.
Got it.
Heroína.
You
Ooh,
got it.
tough one.
Super
I,
Erolina,
I
got it.
claim to be a Spanish teacher and a Spanish speaker, but that's a tough one, man. That accent there.
Yeah,
Right?
that's a hard word.
That's going to be
That's
the main thing we're going to talk about. But I do want to know some of your background. Where'd you grow up? How'd you grow up as far as a print-rich environment,
yeah.
speaking Spanish, learning Spanish? Is that generic enough?
Oh, it's super generic. It's
All
perfect. I
right,
love it. What a
nice.
lead in. What a lead in. No, so it really interesting. So I grew up in Southern California. Both of my parents are from the South, from the New Orleans, Louisiana area. So I grew up in South Central all of my life. But I was exposed to language at such an early age, like in the most organic way ever possible.
Hmm.
So like you, I'm also a Spanish teacher, right? So we have that
Right.
a lot of that in common. But in the 70s, when I was born, how old I am, I actually had a Spanish babysitter, right? She was of Mexican descent. And so they only spoke Spanish in the house.
Nice.
And my mom picked me up from daycare, which is literally next door, right? The home daycare for the lady next
Mm.
door. She picked me up and I was still asking for leche and pan. And my mom, who only speaks English, was like, what the heck? I don't know. So my mom likes to tell the story that she would just tell me to point to whatever I was asking for in Spanish, because as
Ah.
African American mom, she didn't know. Because in New Orleans, when she grew up, they learned French. So
Mm.
her Spanish was nil, right,
Mhm.
non-existent.
Mhm.
So after, and that happened during my formative when I was developing language.
Yeah.
That happened from like 0 to about 3.5, 4. Then once I stopped going to Maria's daycare, I actually went to like a public free preschool program.
Okay.
But the teachers there were from Martinique and the different islands, so they would teach us
Mm.
songs in French. So here I've already had the Spanish input, right? While I'm developing language, I had this English input. And now when I'm really putting sentences together and having dialogue, I'm learning French. So I actually had a really interesting, really organic way of taking in language, and that
Mhm.
I don't think anybody anticipated that it would have such an important, play such an important role in my life.
Mhm.
So that's really how that started. But just in terms of like a print rich environment, every house in the hood used to have magazines on the table. And so I couldn't imagine going to anyone's house and you didn't see like an Ebony magazine, Essence, Reader's Digest, Jet Beauty of the Week, like all these
Mhm.
things. And so it was Redbook. I think Redbook was like the housekeeping book.
Hmm.
So every single house we went into always had books and reading, and so reading has just always been a part of my normal who I am. And so it's very weird now that you go to people's houses and they don't have any reading
I
material.
know. I
It's
know.
just weird because I'm like, what is on your coffee table? Just candles? Like, where are your books? Where are your
Right.
magazines? So,
Right.
National Geographics at school and, all kind of stuff like that. So
Oh,
reading
that's
and
really cool.
yeah. So that's how I came to be a Spanish speaker. And I don't think I ever told you that.
No, that is very interesting. I'm sifting through that a little bit. That's so interesting. I'm wondering, did you consider that to be normal? Like, did you know maybe that you were a bit of an exception with your friends, family, I mean, the world at large, that you were, you know, multilingual? Was that just for you, just like that's just the way it is? You're not, or did you realize there's a little bit of an exception?
I never thought about it until I got older and we had Spanish class again in seventh grade, sixth and seventh grade.
Mm-hmm.
It never dawned on me as a kid because also too, when I was in kindergarten, there was a little African American boy. Well, he looked African American, but when his mom would pick him up after school, she'd speak to him in Spanish. His name was Enrique, but we called him Kiki. Never dawned on me as a child that Enrique is not an English American name. That's his name. His name is Kiki. That's what we call him. But they were Dominican. And it never dawned on me as a little kid that this is not American. So she
Mm.
would come and teach us. I remember she taught me chocolate. I practiced chocolate so many times because when she came after school, I wanted to tell her, I remember chocolate. And so it was weird because as the years went on, I would get these little nuggets of language.
Hmm.
So I never really thought I was odd
Right.
until I was in junior high school when I realized I'm the only Black kid in here who knows most of these words in Spanish. Like Spanish 1 was so boring to me because I was like, how do I know huevos? Like literally answers would come to me and I couldn't figure out why I had it. It was super A. I was helping the Latin kids and like, llega. They're like, how do you know llega? I'm like, I don't know. I just know it. I just know that means you got here. I just know that. So yeah, so it was, and my foreign language teachers were always tickled by me, but I didn't know they were tickled because I was African American and it never dawned on me. And my mom had reminded me, she's like, what do you mean you don't know why it's so easy? She's like, remember Angelita and Maria? And I was like, oh yeah. So it never dawned on me until I got older and I realized that I stuck out like a sore thumb. And then in college, I was the only African American in the Latin American Studies department. And so like every time I went to Spanish class in college, they would tell me I was in the wrong class, especially as you get higher and higher in the levels. Like, we'd be in Spanish 5 something as a graduate course and they're like, are you in the right spot? I'm like, this is 425, right? On Tuesday, Thursday? I'm like, yeah, this is the right class. So it just became normal for me for people to always, how do you say, like, be surprised that I spoke Spanish. It just became my normal, so. Yeah.
Well, you talk about earlier on in your life, you felt like maybe you're a little bit odd. Like, there's where the language comes in, right? Única, unique, the only, unique, right?
Yeah, it doesn't feel like that though when you're the only one in class.
Yeah.
And people are like, what are you doing here? And you're like, I don't know. I just know the answers. Yeah, but like at 41, I feel like it's such a blessing. But there's just years when, especially as a teacher, I mean, we work together. People think they're in the wrong class. They think you're the sub. So yeah.
I got to think there's a lot of pride there as well. Maybe that first day of Spanish class, maybe you're writing your name on the board, and maybe some of the kids are like, "Really?"
Right.
I felt the same, like as a gringo. You know what I mean?
Yes. Oh, of course.
My last name is not Spanish or anything like that. Yeah. So I love that where it's just kind of like maybe they're waiting for me to open my mouth, and it's like, "Oh, en serio? Sí, habla este güero."
Right, este way. Yeah. Hey. That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do feel a lot of pride now. I feel like it's an accomplishment that I didn't realize. I didn't take it as an accomplishment before. It was kind of became like a little bit of a negative at times. I usually don't speak Spanish to people. Like I'll, say something to you, but normally I don't speak Spanish to people. Because it goes into this huge discussion that's half the time I don't want to get into. But I definitely take it as a sense of pride now when I've had the opportunity to learn and to travel and see so many other morenos like myself who speak Spanish, and they're everywhere. And I'm like, and having the opportunity to connect with other Black Spanish teachers has been so rewarding and fulfilling. That's what the internet has been awesome for me, just connecting with other Spanish teachers who don't look like the norm, right? Whether they're American, African American, whether they've married someone who was Latin. It's been just nice to have that community and that cohort because we all have the same shared experience of being like, the weirdo, the only, el único.
Well, yeah, it seems like probably a lot of that is showing kind of the ignorance of just Americans in general, right? We think like that we forget like, oh, how about the Caribe? How about Guerrero in Mexico, right? With the African and origin. How about the fact that Shakira's Lebanese? How about the Peruvian, Japanese and Chinese and Jewish? You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And on. So definitely.
No, I think it's very. I think the Americans are very censored, and I think a lot of Latinos are very censored, right? So for some reason, they really love that dark haze when you talk about other ethnic groups coming in and their contributions to the to different countries. Brazil, Mexico, there's a huge African population, Mexico and Veracruz in the South, and people never like to talk about it because it's very taboo for whatever reason. We need to get into all that, but I think it's sad because you have a whole richness and warmth of a culture that is so enriched. I mean, just think about America. If they didn't have, Mexicans who shared their amazing culture with us and the food and the flavors and the spirit, and it's like, why deny those things that make your culture even richer? Because it really makes people feel isolated when they don't realize there's a huge community of people just like them, that make things better. So I think my mission has become to let people know about the African influence in Latin America, because I teach it every year and people are always like, what is this? And then I get to take about the Asian influence, right? And then so it's always super cool. Yeah.
Wow. Very interesting. We could go off for a couple hours just on that, huh?
I'm right. It's heavy. It's pretty heavy. Yeah.
How about on the reading side of things? What were you reading as a kid? What I mean, I know you talked about those great coffee table books. Who are some of the authors or writers who really thrilled you as a kid?
As a little guy, I really liked Sweet Valley High,
Oh,
R.L. Stein, The Babysitter's Club.
oh yeah.
I used to write stories like I was one of the Babysitter Club writers. Like I have all these stories from fourth grade. Like I would write about these
Hmm.
kids.
You're pointing like, are they right there? Are they right?
I was actually,
Oh
I
my
point
gosh.
because I was about to pull, I found like a whole pile of stories I used to write as a kid.
Oh shoot.
And I wish I would have took them out. If we pause, I can go
Uh,
get them in. And I got like little A pluses on them. And yeah, but I think one of the first books that I can remember reading was Lord of Thunder, Hear My Cry.
oh yeah.
And I think a lot of people have read that book. But I remember the Scholastic book people would come to my school and I would get so excited. I know I could only have like a sheet of stickers and a book, right? Because money was tight. So I would try and get the best book I could get. And I ordered that book. Oh my God, so many times my mom was like, didn't we already have this book? No. But I read that. And then in fourth grade, I read Charles Dickens, A Christmas Carol.
Okay.
And that plus Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, the two of them together in fourth grade, I remember just my mind in terms of reading and my ability to understand English language, because Roll of Thunder was one context, right, written from a Southern English dialect, right, and I totally got it. And then I read Dickens, and as a 10-year-old, Dickens,
Right,
okay,
right.
and with the exception of a few words, I totally understood the higher, the higher vocabulary, and just those two together were everything for me.
Dang, yeah, Dickens is a 10-year-old. That's quite an accomplishment.
Yeah, we had but my mom would have these books at home too. We had The Hobbit at home. We had what's the wolf book?
Call of the Wild, White Fang.
Yeah, so we had Call of the Wild at home as well. And I would like thumb through them because The Hobbit was a little hard for my brain to wrap around, but Christmas Carol, I totally took to that like a duck to water, and I was so like, oh, the Cratchits. Yeah. What's gonna happen with Bob Cratchits? Right. Like, it's so interesting. Right. So I'm weird.
And we all know that's the best of the Disney is the Christmas Carol, the Mickey's Christmas Carol, but that's
Mickey's Christmas Carol is everything. That is Fire 3000.
Jacob Cratchit or whatever, right?
Yes, it's good stuff. But yeah, so I was blessed to have just a lot of words around as a kid. Always, never denied books, never. Candy, yeah, but books, never.
So you said you were writing, Babysitter's Club, I guess what, fan fiction you might even call it, right?
Absolutely.
What how did the writing and the reading continue into high school and into college? What were you interested in? What was thrilling you then in those days?
So I think in high school, I stopped reading books and novels a lot less, and I picked up a lot more magazines, right? Because that was like the in thing to do. Sure. But I would continue to write stories about my life and how I thought they would turn out. So when I was in high school, I didn't have any relationship with my dad. So we would be in AP English and AP this and AP that. I would actually write stories as, and finish the tale off, like him and I meeting, and then what would happen and what happened after that. Or if I wanted to, if I was a guy at school who I had a crush on, I created this whole story about him and I having this romance. And so I would just take what wasn't happening and recreate it like in a story. And I would turn those in for credit. And those would, I always got good grades for, my stories and short stories, short writings, things like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow. And so like as you like studied in college, like what did you study in college? Were you studying Spanish? Were you reading literature in Spanish? What kind of stuff were you reading at the undergrad level?
So really interesting. So I started off as an international business major and with a Spanish minor. And so I had all these business classes. And so initially I was reading accounting books and finance books. And the only classes that would excite me were my economics of the Caribbean class. Oh, okay. I got into that class big time. And then I talked to one of my professors and she said, well, maybe you're more of a humanities person, you are a business person. And I was like, oh, no, I'm going to rule the world. And she said, well, take a couple more humanities classes. And so, then I'm in, a Cuba communism class, and I'm reading all this Marxist, and I'm reading all these things about Fidel and the United States and Truman. And I'm like, whoa. Then I started taking a little bit more of this. So then that's how I switched from international business. In my senior year, I switched to Latin American studies and Afro-ethnic studies. And once I did that, I had just A's across the board. I was reading African proverb novels. I'm reading, books about the Vietnam War from a Vietnam woman's perspective. Again, reading a lot of history of Latin America, a lot of political writing. Just got into so much more of the humanities in terms of my reading and writing. And then the biggest book I read that was Spanish-wise was 100 Years of Solitude in Spanish. That one was hard. That one was hard. Yes. I had to use a dictionary, right? There was no Google Translate yet. That one was real challenging for me. And I probably should go back and reread it now with a few more years of Spanish experience under my belt. I should probably reread it so I'd get it better. But that was the biggest novel I can remember reading. And then that's when I went to live in Costa Rica for a little while. And then obviously everything is in Spanish. So that was a little bit of a struggle. But yeah, I got into a lot of cultural and political books. Yeah.
Pura vida, right?
Sí, pura vida.
Pura vida, pura vida. The story goes that Gabriel Garcia Marquez was on vacation with his family and had the inspiration for Cien Años de Soledad. And like turned the car around type of thing and drove back and wrote it in some, ridiculously short period of time. They say some of the story is maybe a little bit, a little extra, but we all hate him, right, for writing that incredible book.
Right. How dare he make it sound better? Oh, I know. I also I read a few times I'm like Water for Chocolate. I know that's a salacious tale, but I was thoroughly entertained in college.
Yeah, so I had to teach that in a high school class. And
really?
Yeah.
They allowed you to?
Woo, yeah, that was tough.
You couldn't show the movie though, like you can't.
No.
That's crazy.
Salacious is the word, yes. Great book.
Fantastic.
Right? Buenas recetas y todo, but yeah, that was
Wow, I'm surprised that passed the board.
Right? Yeah. Those are the old days,
Those now they
things have changed a bit. Not that we're that old that we've taught for that long, but anyways. Anyways.
But that's how much change has occurred, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So 2021, Caryn, CJ, you're now what, 32 years old?
32 and a half, baby.
32 and a half. What kind of things are you reading? What kind of things are give you chills of will these days?
I love the chills of the will. So currently I'm reading books about how to reduce, my book I'm reading right now is The 4-Hour Work Week. How to get, how to reclaim your time and monetize that. Reading a lot of books on how to monetize your time and your skill set that you already have. I'm also in the middle of reading this book. People keep gifting me books. Literally, I go to the mail and I get new books. So this one is how any startup can achieve customer growth. So I'm learning about how to do startups. Now everything has shifted from culture to how to make money and get my time back.
Right.
So that's what I'm reading right now, but I'm definitely into them.
Nice. Yeah. Well deserved,
Absolutely. Oh wait, can you time out? Can you pause for just a second?
I can.
Sorry. I'm gonna